Excel Import and Export Tool. Primavera has a built-in tool for importing and exporting to and from Excel. The user must be assigned a super user security profile, and the following data tables are imported and/or exported. There is an activities table, a relationships table, a resources table, an assignments table, and an expense table. Generally, as a principle, if I want to import data, I'll create one or two activities with all the data fields that I need to import, and I export them as an example. Then I populate the Excel spreadsheet, and then I can import the information. There are quite a few restrictions on what you can import into P6, but you can export most data. So let's have a look at how this operates. I have the Ausbil project here, and I'll export some data from this using the Excel export. First of all, you need to go to the Edit User Preferences. You need to make sure that you're not showing the subunits. If you're showing the subunits, it will throw up an error message. I also make sure I have the date format in the format I'd like to see it exported, so that either if I cut and paste or export, it's got the right format. I then select File, Export, and I need to select Spreadsheet, and there are 5 tables. I'll export all of them so you can see the content of them. I select Next. I need to have the project open and select the project I want to export, and then I need to create a table that exports the data I want to export. So I can add one, and for example, I'll call it Demo, and for each table I can decide what data I want to export. So on the Activities table, I want to actually export all the dates because it's quite interesting to see what restrictions there are on date export, so I'm going to export all the dates. On the durations, I'm going to export some of the durations, so I'm going to select the actual duration, the at completion duration, the original duration, and the remaining duration. I'll put these up the top here. I also want to export some codes, so I'm going to have the activity code so you can see how this comes across. So I'm going to bring across the Melbourne department, and also some user definable fields, so I'm going to bring across these user definable fields so you can see how these come across as well. So I set up the table. I can set up my relationships table and decide what I want to bring across. I can set up expenses, resources. I can decide what filter and how I want to sort it when it comes across. So that's created a table, and once you create a table, you can use it to import and export as many times as you like. Then I select Next, and I decide where I want to put it. I'll put it on the desktop. I'll select Next and finish, and it now exports that data. So this is what the file looks like when you open it. I've got a task table, I've got a predecessor table, I've got a cost table, a resource assignment table, and a user data table. So if I click on the Select All and double click on the activity, it then makes the fields self-adjust. First of all, when you export or import activities, you've got to have the task ID, the status, and the WBS code. You'll see the top line here is the line that holds the database field ID, and the one below is the colloquial name. So you don't want to have this line below imported, and you'll see that if you go to the end of the line here, you'll see it's got delete this row. So if I drag this down, this will allow me to delete all the activities that I've highlighted here. So if I go across, I'm going to delete everything from 1020 to 1080 when I import this file. So the uniqueness of an activity in a database is the WBS ID and the activity ID. So you need to make sure that you have those two, and the activity status. If I want to create some activities, I can drag this down, and I need to make sure it has a valid WBS. You can't import unless you have a valid WBS and the status as well. I can then add an activity name like new activity 1, and I can drag these down, and you can see that the Melbourne department here has come in with the code and not the description. And you'll see that this is a unique ID of that field in this database. So I can therefore assign the department if I want to on import here. If I move across, you'll see that we've got the user definable field, the last period start and finish, and again I can populate those in the last period actual duration if I want to. So user definable fields can be populated quite simply. You'll see that these fields here have an asterisk against them. Once they've got an asterisk against them, they cannot be imported. So you can see there's quite a lot of actual duration that is calculated. The at completion duration is also calculated from the actual plus the remaining. But you can see that I can import the original and the remaining. So if I want to put in a duration of 10, 20, 30, 40 against these activities that I'm importing, I can type the duration here and that will be imported. I can not assign resources here. This is a listing of the resources, but I can go to the task resource here and import the resources using that table. You'll see that there's a lot of dates that cannot be imported. Anything with an asterisk may not be imported. So I recommend that if you want to import data, export the data that you want to import and see how the table fronts up and whether you can actually import and export it. You can't create resources, you can't create activity codes, you can't create WBS codes. These all have to exist before you import it. Again, the task predecessor and successor, this is a useful table. So again, you can use this to import and export. And you'll find that if you've got leads and lags, this is one of the best places to review them. Project costs, you can see here, this is where the cost was exported, and if I want to import this, I can import this data as well. Moving along, these are a list of the resources in the database, and I can assign resources to new activities here as well. So at this point in time, now I can save this and then I can import it. We can see the effect of importing it. So I now want to import the file. So I select File, Import. I need to import the spreadsheet. I need to go and select the file that I wish to import, which is this spreadsheet. I select Next. I'm only going to bring in the activities because that's the only table I changed. I need to decide where I want to import it to. So you need to make sure your project is open before you start. Select Next and Finish, and it should import that data. So when I go and look at the activities, you'll see now that the activities that I had nominated to be deleted have been deleted. The new activities have been added, and you'll find also that if I go and customize it and look at the project codes and bring across the Melbourne department, you'll also see that it's assigned Melbourne department. So import and exporting with Excel is very simple. As I say, I recommend you create one or two activities which contain all the data you require, export the fields, make sure they've got an asterisk by them, and then you can import them again. If you want to bring in activity codes, you need to go to Enterprise, Activity Codes, and create them. Or project codes have to be created, calendars have to be created, WBS nodes have to be created, but you can import user-definable fields as long as the format is the correct format to bring it in. So that's a brief overview of how the import and export from Excel works. In my book, I've got notes and/or restrictions on import, and I've covered all of those in my demonstration. I've got some notes on and restrictions on import, and I'm suggesting that you create a test project before you start and just practice on a test project before you mess up a live project. So export some data with the column headings, add or change them, and import them. Before you want to import into a live project, take a copy of it, Control-C, Control-V, take a backup copy in case you mess it up. Often I find it better to import data into user-definable fields, particularly costs and units. So I'd import costs or units into resource user-definable fields, and then I global change them across, because when you bring them into the user-definable fields, you know you're going to get them into the database. Whereas sometimes when you import against resources or activities, you can't always bring the data in because of the status of the activity is wrong. For example, if an activity is finished, you can't bring in a remaining duration into that field, but you can bring it into a user-definable field, and you can see that it's not global changed across. All activity data must have the activity ID in the WBS code. Remember the delete record flag. That will delete any record, and you can therefore delete relationships or activities with that delete record. And it must be placed against any line that you want to delete on import. So in general terms, play with the project that doesn't matter. Back up your project before you import and export. Consider bringing data into a user-definable field and global change across.